agenda. And I had, okay, perfect. Yes, so we will be starting with the acceptance of minutes or discussion of minutes and then possible acceptance from February 26th.
I had one suggested edit at the end on the facilitator and note taker, just to mention that there was a discussion of standardizing facilitation and minutes, possibly changing.
Okay. Yeah.
Just put that as a bullet. Standardizing facilitation and minutes, possibly changing approach.
Since there's a timestamp, I was curious, are these done with AI?
No, just me timestamping as I went.
Personal eye.
Just, yeah, that was authentic, Colleen.
Yeah, I was just curious because I thought, oh, that looked good. Excuse me.
In that case, I make a motion to accept them.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Great. Wonderful, one checked off the list. Shared revision of working files. That a particular request?
Yeah, that's getting back to the concept of having a file share of some kind.
Yes.
For kind of an authoritative source of documents that only Kate can update, that everybody can see. So the question is that something that would be compliant with our rules for quorum? And is it technically possible to do that in the city of Portsmouth?
Like continue doing it the way we're doing now, which is
To post it rather than having to
just
post it as a static version, and then people.
yeah, and then people can download it, add to it, send it to me, and it keeps getting uploaded to our webpage. Maybe
I mean, the ideal would be to be able to do that.
we could have like
add to it.
a tab on the sustainability page under like working documents.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
That'd be cool.
Or there might even be things that are not even. Yes. Mhm.
we'll just have to, I think, say up front that it's drafted and not voted or approved.
But it would have to be publicly available. It couldn't be just a working document for the
Right.
committee.
Yes.
So how would we go about doing it? Could we just create a Google Drive and so for example, and start putting stuff out there?
We can't have Google. Last time I checked, we weren't allowed to have a Google Drive.
Like a Microsoft folder.
Yeah.
I mean, what is the reason why we can't have a Google? Is it because
I guess we could have a Google Drive, but we couldn't have a shared document in the Google Drive.
shared for read only?
Right, it would all be like, it would be view only and not editable.
Right. Well, you could obviously edit it.
And I could be the editor.
So is it okay if it's read only, then it would be okay?
I'll double check. I'll have to ask the legal department, but I would think that meets the criteria because you're not all working in it or having the ability to comment at once and chat.
And that would have to be publicly available.
I'm not sure. I'm trying to think back when we had didn't we have a Google Drive folder for when it was a Blue Ribbon Committee and John Cardy had a folder? And John Kennedy had a folder too that he posted stuff. Maybe I'm remembering that wrong. That was 3 years ago.
I think getting something that's more agile than we have now, I think would really help us.
Yeah. Let me ask if we can do, a read-only Google Drive.
Okay, perfect.
Did we want to talk about the A?
Yes, we do.
Oh, yes, sorry, I put that into approving minutes in my brain, but actual facilitation and minutes discussion. Yes, so last month we had discussed if we want to keep switching around facilitation and minutes or assign those tasks to people permanently, obviously permanent.
Specifically the chairman.
Specifically, well, I think
Sure.
specifically chairs, at least for facilitation.
Right.
And notes can be someone else.
I think Councillor Hopkins asked if it could be city staff doing the notes because most committees I can't think of one that doesn't have city staff doing their notes. So Counselor Hopkins was asking about that and why this committee was different.
Sorry, is she essentially volunteering herself to do all of the notes then?
No, volunteering Kate to
She's
do.
volunteering me.
Oh, okay.
What do you think, Kate?
I stopped doing minutes for other boards because we hired outside minute takers and it honestly takes up too much time. But I guess we vote to do it, then I would have to, is my answer to that.
Uh, I'd just like to speak to this in general, is that I'm not wedded to the form that that we take on. I am feeling for my experience and enjoyment and quality of life. I like coming to a meeting where I feel a sense of relationship and ownership and trust. Relationship, ownership, and trust. There are two basic forms of committees with some variation. The traditional one is vertical and it's very efficient. It gets work done and it's what is the business model. It's also the city government model. It's also the university model. What that does not do for me is it doesn't build the relationship necessary for trust and a sense of community and well-being. So the forms that were formed to have everybody take the minutes, we lost efficiency. Everybody, because we were a voluntary committee, took on the burden. I don't think anybody wanted to do minutes because you can't be as present. So we shared the burden, and in some ways we were sharing that. Now the facilitation, I feel, is a skill that I never had, but I developed. And I think that as a mentorship for the high school students, it was really a major contribution for all of us to learn how to facilitate as well as we can. And extroverts might like doing it more than introverts, but each of us stretches our own way. Having said that, I think we've been dysfunctional in the area of having a consistent rotation. There was a few years where we had 12 people, and you knew when your time was coming up, and it went pretty smoothly. And I think the reason we're talking about this now is that the committee is at a fragmented state, like much of society. Much of society and much of the social network, in my experience, is experiencing extreme change at a rapid rate and having more things to deal with than they could. So I'm open to saying what works in our current environment with who we have. But I will wind up with what a business executive, and his credentials were, he was an electronical engineer who created a company with 5 other guys who made $1 million, multi-million-dollar business, and they sold it. So this is what he taught me. And I've shared it with the group many times. And this is what I think. Every good meaning, business or city, should have the 3 R's. First R, relationship. Second R, reality. What's the current reality? And third R is responsibility. Let me just talk a little bit. Relationship in most organizations is the first one to be thrown out. You got a squeaking wheel, you got to get to it, so you throw out the relationship. And in the long run, a lot of people would say that's counterproductive. So always keeping in the relationship in some form. In our particular case, it's a check-in. Reality. Always checking in. That's where the minutes come in. That's where the agenda comes in. That's where what is real about the committee. We don't want to pretend like we're something we're not, but we don't want to be fully empowered. And the last one is responsibility. And that's where the minutes come in. And in the minutes, if I said I'm going to come back and do something, I look in the minutes and they say, yeah, or that was it. So relationship, reality, responsibility. I'm thinking that that's the kind of what I'd like to do. And so rather than put a burden on any particular person, what can we do as a community to dialogue, to come out? So I usually think everybody comes out feeling this is the right thing to do. So that's my yes, Bill.
I was just going to comment on a couple things, Bert. I think that the role we're talking about is not a CEO role. I think it's a facilitator role. And having spent my career in an organization of 50,000 and then a subgroup of 500,000, you knew who the director was, the office director, the division chief, the project manager, and they had very specific roles. Same thing for my wife at the university, where there's a chair with formal responsibilities for academic departments. But I'm thinking what we're really talking about is a facilitator, whether it's a consistent, say, co-chairs facilitating or rotating. It's still facilitating. It's still a group effort. It's still a consensus building. And I don't really see that as hierarchical. Otherwise, I think what you said makes a lot of sense. The 3 R's, I think, resonates with me. I wanted to ask Kate, you said that there are hired note takers on other committees. How does that work?
I'm not sure if it's for committees, at least our boards and commissions have them. We just kind of got away from having staff do them because of being present in meetings. It's hard to keep track of everything and also contribute to the conversation. I would have to ask about other committees. I'm not sure what Energy Advisory Committee does.
Stephanie Secord takes the minutes.
Stephanie, okay. Because there's
Any
two
other
staff meetings on.
committees?
With the Golden
Folks, Wayne?
Board, we have the hired person that does it. We used to have the superintendent's assistant, and then, sometimes the meetings go till 11. It wasn't really fair to have her stay at the meetings till 11 o'clock. So that's when we abandoned it and
So
have the paid person now.
the main limit with the minutes specifically was consistency of information and template. I know we had a template. I think that having a shared file system of some case would help in that way, that like someone could go and download it. But I do think that if we had someone who became really good at taking minutes, that would be helpful. If in the past year we haven't achieved that consistency, we either have to assign it to one person or make a decision as a committee to figure out why and then go through and do something to achieve that consistency, as the meeting notes are our main way of understanding what we as a committee are doing. And then the facilitation, I think that I think the check-in questions, having sort of a main facilitator and then individual people running the sections that they want to take on, like there are ways to build it in. I do think that the relationships you were talking about and the culture that we want to build on the committee are very important. As you said, a lot of times people sacrifice relationship in the short term and it ends up hurting them in the long term. But there's sort of the like, how do we encourage functionality while maintaining that sense of strong governance? I don't think that not having specific governance is going to push us in the direction we want culturally. Keeping it open, and this is a personality thing, keeping things open-ended is harder for me to navigate than having specifics that I can then advocate within the boundaries of. So I would say, just personal opinion, having the facilitation done by chairs with sections led by the specific people who nominate items to the agenda, the check-in questions rotating, and then the note-taking either to Kate or someone else. I don't feel like it has to be a staff member so long as we have that consistency. That is my personal opinion, but if that's the standard that the city wants, I don't care.
Yeah, and I would add to consistency, I would add accuracy.
Yeah.
Because people who don't come every month and then come in to do the minutes
Yeah.
might not have the flow in mind and understand the context for an agenda item. It also makes it more readable if there's a consistent format. So the format we talked about really highlighted actions and, votes that were taken.
Yes.
So follow-up actions and then next month items. I forget the whole thing, but it was very simple.
Yeah.
Not covering all the discussion points that
Yes.
you get from the
Or
recording.
who said what?
Yeah,
What really,
Yeah.
what did
Beyond.
we conclude?
Yep.
beyond
Yeah.
what we need.
So for, let's say, until midsummer, would we want to try having chairs facilitate the meeting overall, continuing to rotate check-in questions, and then having the people who nominate specific items to the agenda present and manage their conversation pieces? Does that work for us? And then, Kate, do you want to investigate having a paid note taker come? Is that something possible, or do we want to figure it out differently as a committee?
Or pay yourself to take notes.
Or pay yourself to take note? If you're here anyway, but I don't want to
That's
put it on you.
Yeah,
Is there anybody that likes to take notes? I mean, I frankly hate it. But if there's somebody on the committee that would,
Cautiously volunteer myself and maybe we check in at
Yeah.
summer as well,
Yeah.
but I don't
Okay.
want the burden to just go on to you.
well, yeah,
And I feel like that would be,
not to have someone have the burden fall on one person, so.
yeah, so let's try it. And if it doesn't work, we can revisit it.
Yeah, and maybe, I don't mind taking notes, I just am really good at it until I'm not, and then things kind of fall apart, so maybe if we like trade off or something like that, we can figure it out.
And try a
Happy to-
template.
Yeah, I'd be happy to distribute the template,
That
I
would
guess.
be, yeah,
The problem was not everybody had Word, so people would have to adapt it, which is understandable.
I like the way you put it, Colleen, and I think, I won't speak for Fred, but I think you're both happy, I think, or I'm happy. Fred can speak for himself about co-chairing as facilitators, not, sorry, but CEOs, not hierarchical, but collegial and collaborative facilitators. And I think your idea about specific topics being led by particular people, I mean, it doesn't have to be mechanical. You could
sure,
propose a topic and not want to lead it or whatever, but when there's a significant topic, have the person proposing it facilitate it. And then I think maybe it would be nice to just rotate the check-in and the closeout. I think one of the problems is people are not able to come to every meeting. Not that it takes a whole lot of work to prepare for the front and the back, but make that more of a shared responsibility. But then the agenda, which Fred and I have been putting together with Kate since we've started being co-chairs. So we have a pretty good idea of really the intent, where to start and where to end on this. And I think what Councillor Hopkins was commenting on last time was that she was facilitating and she didn't really know what we had in mind for the start and the finish, which was difficult. And I think it makes it a lot less efficient.
yeah, I would add to Bert's point earlier about the mentorship and the professional development that can come. That is a big add for me in attending this committee personally. And as new folks come in, ensuring that even if they're not, facilitating, actively adding things to agendas, all of that, that we're just welcoming them with professional development and mentorship opportunities. And that is something that we can build into the structure without it being part of every single meeting. It can just be more about the culture that we build and the way that we welcome new folks in.
Which can be organic. And I think when we get to the next topic on what are the priorities for 2026, hopefully we come up with a short list of these that 2 or 3 people are interested in, and that's really a great opportunity for mentorship as well on a shared interest.
Is someone currently taking minutes while we're talking about them?
I am currently taking minutes.
My gosh.
But I don't, because I don't think anyone was. So they are being taken, but if you want to take over,
Okay.
that would be much appreciated. Thank you. Great.
Thanks, Rihanna. I just want to make one more point. Is that the facilitator, the chair role rotates frequently.
Mhm.
So even though Bill and I are doing it, next January, 2 more people can come in, 2 young people, 1 person, whatever. So it's not like we're gonna be like CEOs or kings or
No kings.
lifetime appointees or something until we die. And so it's, so the opportunity for truly leading this group happens very frequently. But it's worth having a whole year of, leading, creating the agenda, running the agenda, running the meeting, and making sure that the ideas that went into it, that came from many people, are presented fairly and accurately and richly. So, and that's where the real mentorship and opportunity comes from. Because next year, maybe Colleen will be the chairwoman, and she'll be able to do all that herself, and we can help her and all that, and whoever, just, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I hope you're the chairman next year, actually. But at any rate, so it's not like we're, locking in something that can never be broken and that doesn't allow any opportunities to arise for other people.
I like the point you make, Bill, and when I said there's combinations there, they're within. So I think we're moving in the right direction from where I'm going. And I'm thinking, I hadn't thought the rotating check-in, because that can include, and given the fact that there are people that aren't here, I'm just thinking aloud here. At the end of each meeting, part of the chairs, who's ever facilitating, is there somebody who hasn't done the check-in, would like to do it next week? So the person is volunteering because they know they're going to be there. And then we know it, and we're not questioning, are they going to show up? So that could be another variation.
Yeah.
And so I'd suggest perhaps that. And I personally like, if the person does a check-in, that they could also do the check-out. That's been kind of a little newer thing. And it's good to have everybody, if they didn't get a chance to say something, to say, and the chair people. And I think it'd be great if you're aware of time so that there's enough so that we don't run over time, that we leave at 10 minutes at the end. So those would be my 2 additions, if people like the checkout.
I like it. So yeah, okay, so we can do facilitation is done by the chairs. If you nominate an item to the agenda, you have the option of either having a chair lead it or leading that section yourself. The check-in and check-out questions are done by the same person on a rotating basis.
Checkout question isn't really a checkout question. It's just people just,
Takeaway.
There often is a question and then people just say whatever they want anyway, so it kind of depends. It could just be, there's a checkout.
But
it's
there's been a form which it says, I usually use the same question. Do you have any additional thoughts, or what are you
taking away from the meeting? Yeah.
What are you
Yeah.
taking away, or any additional thoughts?
Should be the same question every month.
And that would be talk about mentoring. If a student comes in, if you do that for a year, they'll get that if they want to do it at the end.
Okay, yes, okay, so check-in questions are done by rotation with an opportunity to volunteer for next month's offered at the end of each meeting. Facilitation is done by the chairs, and if you have an item on the agenda that you've nominated, then you can either lead that section yourself or have a chair lead it for you. And then checkout questions are standardized to be takeaways or final comments at the end of the meeting.
That sounds like a motion.
Do I have a motion to?
What about minutes? Do you want to add minutes to that?
Minutes, thank you. Minutes are done by Rhiannon. And we will revisit this, do we wanna say August, July?
July.
Like,
July. We'll revisit this in July to see how it's working for people. Rhiann, if you feel like it's gonna crash and burn before then, you can
Okay,
let us know.
I will raise the flag.
And we thank you.
Is there any comments from people who,
Yes.
Or online.
yeah,
Kristen and Jess, do you have anything to add here? No? Perfect. All right. Hello. Hi.
Jess is former co-chair. Do you have any thoughts on where we're heading on this?
No, I think it's a good plan. You've all kind of hit on a lot of the touch points already, that it's felt a little disorganized, and I know there are certain people who just kind of come to the table or offer repeatedly. So at least if we have more of a structured thing, I do think that if note taking continues to be a responsibility of the members of the committee, that maybe doing something like Rhiann has offered to do, where, you know, one person takes it on for a few months, so there's a little bit of continuity and fluidity to it, might be helpful. Because I do think notes can look so different from one month to another depending on who's taking them. So that might be helpful, but it all makes sense to me. Sounds reasonable.
Awesome. Do I have any motions regarding this new setup?
Do we
I
wanna,
move that we,
I'm just gonna say, do we wanna repeat it all again for Sully now?
Oh,
Sully's here.
so the way that we are organizing, governing the committee now is that check-in questions, which are just the hellos that we do at the beginning, are going to be done by rotation with an opportunity to volunteer for next month's at the end of each meeting. Facilitation of each meeting is going to be done by the co-chairs, with individual agenda items able to be done either the person who nominates that item, or if they don't want to, by the co-chairs. Rhiann is going to take over note-taking until July, which is when we'll check in on things. And the checkout questions are going to be standardized as takeaways or final comments.
All right, sounds good.
That was a lot of words.
I move that we adopt the procedures as you outlined.
All right, any seconds?
second.
Second, all in favor?
All right,
Aye, great.
I'm just worried that if I volunteer to be the check-in question person, I'm gonna be like, it's gonna be stewing in my mind for a whole month.
I will coach you if you need to.
Whereas-
Do the co-chairs get to do check-in questions
Of
sometimes?
course,
Ooh,
Of course.
of course. I will not take that away from you. All right, we're gonna move on to the discussion of 2026 committee priorities. So I'm gonna turn this over to the co-chairs actually, because y'all had a plan.
Yes, and this is a continuation of the discussion we had at the last meeting. We didn't have a lot of time for that because I think we spent so much good time on the master plan. So there's a few slides here, and very nicely, we've had some suggestions from members about priorities. So I'm going to leave those toward the end and maybe just work through these really quickly and not beat them to death, because I think we'd like to do is not spend the year talking about priorities for the year, but get on to them. Just basically, what would we like to accomplish in 2026? And we're already through a quarter of that. How do we decide? And the key question is, well, what does the committee as a committee want to work on? What would the members individually like to work on? And can we end up concluding with a short list of priorities that would be things that are, well, we'll see. Try the next slide. How to decide. Now, one way to do that is to have a very strong reference to the council's new strategic objectives, which is on the next slide and we'll get to in a minute. Do we want to focus primarily on the cap? Do we want to focus on current projects that are in the CIP? Really, what this committee has proposed over the last 2 years, we've been proposing CIP projects. Do we want to consider only things that have an impact or importance? Do we want to consider things that are of the committee's collective interest, individual member interests, or other? Any thoughts on how to decide? I mean, we could go into the exercise of little dots and scoring and criteria and all of that, but maybe we don't need to do that, but what do you think about the how to decide? Anything not on the list or anything that resonates with you? You'd like to advocate for everything should be the cap? Should we spend all our time on the cap?
We don't have to pick one either.
No.
Right.
It could be all of the above or none of the above.
I think the CIP is really important because those are things that we have committed to and the city is committed to. So, certainly staying on top of that and following up, and I think that's important.
And there's two sides of the coin. One is what's in the current CIP that really needs tracking, monitoring, and advocating. And the other is the next cycle for the CIP. And there is a link between 2 and 3 because I think all of our CIP projects have come right out of the cap. Other thoughts?
I like the strategic objectives in terms of just keeping up to date with what the city's doing and making sure that we are aligning with them and they're aligning with us.
And we'll look at those next slide.
Yeah, I would love a scorecard. I don't know if that's necessarily something that we need to take the time to make because I don't want to put this off for another month. But to me, this kind of screams scorecard. So maybe that will emerge naturally when we go through the priorities people have suggested.
Yeah. We could always start with a sort of brainstorming of 5, 6, 7, whatever topics that people like. And then we could go back and say, is this important? Is it in the cap? Is it a CIP? Does the committee agree? Does anybody want to work on this? Give a 1 to 3 score, for example.
Well, I think, and when Colleen mentions a scorecard, I think they did this for the cap, where you have a kind of a two dimensional matrix where you have like degree of difficulty and impact. And you want to do things that have impact, but you also have to be realistic that you can't take on too many things that have a high degree of difficulty. So some kind of a scorecard like that, where you're considering feasibility as well as value, could be useful.
Other thoughts?
I just wanted to say, it doesn't really have to do with choosing a topic, but it might be worthwhile this year to really consider approaching it like we have subcommittees, one working on past projects that need to get done that are in the CIP now, one working on developing and preparing like the plans for submitting to the CIP, and then another one working on something else. But I think having dedicated working groups this year might help us facilitate better.
One of the drawbacks is there's not very many of us and
Yeah.
focus on it once a month.
Yeah.
Once a month. So, I mean, that's one way of cutting it. And another way of cutting it is by topic.
Yeah.
Initiative. Other thoughts? Okay, let's hit the next slide. This
Oh,
is a-
wait, sorry, I had my hand up. Can I just kind of chime in here? And I'm not sure where this fits. But also thinking about actions that are already in the works that maybe could use some more support, meaning I know Kristen and the health department have been trying to do skip the stuffs initiatives with restaurants, but I don't know where they're at in that or following through with that. And we have a discussion about a new housing committee, and so is it worthwhile to be more engaged in that and part of that conversation? There, the bike ped plan and that new committee, there are lots of things going on that maybe could use to benefit from more community awareness and support. And is that something that we engage in and help with this year to kind of build strategies that are already in action a little bit or in some capacity?
Yeah, those are great points. And I don't think that we necessarily have to end up only with new things, because there are things that are in the hopper, or like the new Blue Ribbon Bike Pedestrian Committee or the housing plan that the city staff is developing. I mean, all those things are really fair game, and they may have a current element and a new element to it. But yeah, those are great points. Anything else?
I would add as
Yeah.
low weighting if there are things that we know funding, grants, sponsorships exist for.
Yeah.
Or where we can combine budgets with anybody, then that
Mm-hmm.
can flip to the top.
Yeah,
Sort of like low hanging fruit. I mean,
A funded fruit.
okay.
so it's low hanging fruit, particularly anything where there may be a funding opportunity that has a short
Yeah,
time
grant
duration.
writing does take effort, which is why I wouldn't characterize it as low hanging fruit. But if people spot like we know that there's going to be trees distributed across small town America, then we could say having trees for heat resilience is like our number one goal.
And then the opportunity is maybe for committee members to work with city staff on something that the staff wouldn't have time,
Yeah,
100% time.
I think it should be a low weighting because I'm not sure that much funding exists anyway, and we might operate kind of to Jess's point, in a better sort of visible support role, in the things that are already funded and already happening. But, it is something to keep an eye on.
Yeah, and lots of possible roles. Let's look at the next slide, which is just a kind of a.
Kristen has her hand
Yeah,
up too.
Kristen.
Hi, yeah, I just wanted to be sure to let you know that I'm happy to give you a quick update on where we're at with Skip the Stuff when it's appropriate. Just let me know.
Okay, and I think maybe as we get into possible priorities, and I think it's going to be like just the beginning of a list that we can include that as well as some of the other ideas that have come in. So just as a refresh, let's look at the council's strategic objectives, which I think just are maybe 6 weeks old or so, not much more than that. Housing, increase the supply, decrease cost, expand below market options. Parking and transportation, I would have called that transportation and parking. But very key to that, which lit my eyes up, is create a multimodal city for Portsmouth. Governance for the governed, improve resident service, challenge state and legal barriers. And I think that last one is really important because often we're so focused locally, but there's so many limitations that are at the state level. And I think those need to be understood. It may not be something committee members can directly affect, but to understand the context and whether there are opportunities, because certainly the city is advocating and testifying and lobbying for some really important things that have sustainability implications. Arts, culture, and enrichment of residential life, reduce school food poverty, and then the sixth is very much on target with a lot of the things that we've concerned ourselves with as a committee. Protect Portsmouth's character, healthy community, preserve natural and built environments. So there's the cap right there, as well as the promote resiliency and solar use. So particularly, well, I mean, the Portsmouth character is pretty open-ended, but those last three bullets, I think, really are important. And I think having advocated for different things that are sustainability things, any chance that we have to reference these strategic objectives. I know that last year we made a lot of good purpose referencing the cap and referencing, and it was the cap in the affordable housing or climate change were the priorities for the priority year. But here we have 6 very nice, crisp objectives that we can definitely pivot off of. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say about housing, that it's really important that all of us think about housing in terms of weatherization. Half the housing stock in Portsmouth is rental and something like half of it is substandard. So a lot of our energy in Portsmouth is going to substandard housing, out the window, out the walls, out the whatever. So I really would love it if each one of us is a spokesperson for that when it comes to housing. Because people think of housing, new housing projects and affordable housing, workforce housing, but rental housing and other housing weatherization is really important.
And I would add to that the transportation access aspect of affordable housing and affordability, that maybe if the target is to spend no more than 30% on housing, once you add transportation, that's 50%. And sometimes it's true that a dollar spent on a bus is the best dollar you could spend on affordable housing. So I think that both that energy and transportation are really good windows in for us on number one.
The cap does a good job of identifying co-benefits,
Mhm.
so we can very easily go in and just, even just word search which
And
one's
this,
the one.
this committee hit the co-benefits very hard
And I think it
in developing.
worked really well.
Developing the cap.
Yeah.
Co-benefits is our sustainability middle name. Okay. Next slide. So we need to just keep our eye on that. So Effie provided this as a priority, which I think helps us get a running start to consider this, because I think it has a lot of the aspects we've talked about, like how do you pick a priority? Here's a potential priority, and Effie can talk us through that. And then
Yeah,
after
I-
this, we have,
Yeah.
I think 3 that came in from Councillor Hopkins, and we can run through those. But Effie, do you
Yeah.
want to talk about this?
Sure. I talked to Jess and Rianne about the CAP priority of implementing a zero waste plan. I looked at some things going on in New Hampshire. For example, Concord, New Hampshire, for many years has had a pay per bag system. And really, some figures are like 40% reduction in the amount of waste they have. It's really outstanding. I'm not going to quote that number outside this room, but I think it's really an important thing for a waste plan to look at for Portsmouth. And I have to say, the picture I stole from the internet, it's not Portsmouth waste. So if you see something in there that looks like something you threw out, it's probably not yours. And for a long time, we've talked about curbside composting, and that also can have a really high percentage impact. I've seen figures between 10 and 20%, maybe higher. And single-use plastic, we will always bring up for multiple reasons and co-benefits to eliminating it. Something interesting I saw recently is Lebanon, New Hampshire is using methane from their landfill to get energy. And it's a really interesting prospect, and it's the kind of thing that consultants doing a plan, a zero waste plan, could look at. And then the idea of a reuse center. So instead of throwing my old Bose CD player away, I'd bring it to a place like Makerspace, and somebody that knows electronics and has those circuitry tools, I don't know, would be able to fix it, and instead of filling up the dump with it. And an important thing about this, if the committee decides we want to take this on, is that this has offsetting savings. I mean, once you pay for the plan and get it going, there would be savings. The other thing I want to stress is we have a really great public works department, and I haven't yet spoken to anyone there about this, Peter Rice specifically. So that would be early stages if the committee wants to go forward with this before we do a capital improvement plan proposal or anything.
Effie, what is the pay per bag system?
So instead of just putting your trash out and, your wheelie bin or whatever, you buy bags from the city. In Concord, they're purple bags. I think they're $3 each for the big ones. And you can only put trash out in those bags. So there's also this political argument, because people in Portsmouth probably feel like, hey, I already pay for my trash in the property tax. Now you're asking me to pay for bags. So there'd have to be some way of phasing it in, or a way to figure out how we educate people about that, because it's going to be reducing costs. But in the meantime, you and I are going to be paying more for garbage bags.
And it has an incentive to throw it out less and
Yeah.
recycle more.
Right, yeah.
Can I ask a question about this process?
Yeah,
Are we just going through all of them and then
No.
discussing? Okay,
we put this one in as an example
okay,
of a sort of a fully fleshed out,
yes,
more mature one. And I think when we get a little further in the next couple of slides, we'll start listing them. But this one, if we wanted to say, how do you decide? Well, is it relevant for the cap? Yes.
Yeah, and curbside composting is, I think, WM4 in the CAP
Yeah.
specifically, so.
And is it of interest to the committee? Well, we need to confirm that. Is it of interest to 3 committee members? Yes, 3 committee members develop this. So this is sort of like getting a running jump on a priority, which is very nice to have on the table just to get us thinking. So let's say if we end up with some other ones doing this kind of a scoping out of the possibilities is really a next step. But I think it's really nice to have this for reference. And I think we'll see on the next slides from Councillor Hopkins, something very similar. So keep the next slide.
Can I?
Yeah.
I mean, just to further drill down into committee interest, I think that every priority should have an owner and an end of year goal.
Yep. And owner and ideally other.
And yes, and other people, but just
Yeah.
I have interest in many things. I'm willing to own far fewer.
Yeah.
So
Or get involved in a discrete number of items, and the end purpose outcome result may be quite different for each of these. There may be something very open-ended like community education, have a community climate conversation for one, or get a proposal into the CIP, very specific for another.
yes. So would we say that like the waste management one has an owner in one of you three?
Yeah, or it could be someone else on the committee.
Yeah,
Right, yeah, okay,
but I think what we see is a path, sort of a path forward.
I
on
see.
these, like
Okay,
next.
yeah.
And to be clear, this is just for the plan, a waste plan. It's not
For every single thing on that
implementing
list,
a
yes.
paper bag and
It's an owner of a working group to develop a zero waste plan.
Or
That's,
well, a CIP for funding for.
thank you, yes, okay.
This would be similar, I just want to see if my concept. When we first heard of a climate action plan, it was just an idea.
Yeah.
And then we got it in the CIP and we got money and we developed it. So if we were to go for this, that would be a similar process. That we say, yes, this plan would be helpful. We would like to get a really good one and we're gonna get funds and we're gonna have a goal for it to be, the plan will be ready, and then we'd have to talk about implementing it. Or
and quite a few of the CIP projects that we've been involved in are first step plans, but once the plan is done, then there's the work to be done for the implementing it. And the CAP is really a big example of that, but some of the other ones like solar and EV plans that we've advocated for are more discrete, but those are plans.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's helpful context.
Next slide.
Yeah.
Okay, and Councillor Hopkins isn't here to talk through these, but let's just touch on these and then maybe next month she can go into some greater detail. But I thought that this set, which just came this afternoon, were really very interesting and very, very good. I mean, clearly some very thorough thought went into this. This Portsmouth Car-Free Challenge, I think, is interesting because we've been talking more about specific transportation CAP strategies like expand public transit, consider alternatives like shuttle loop and microtransit, support the bike pedestrian plan, shift to EVs. I mean, those are really the core transportation items in the CAP. But this is a kind of a new, fresh look that's related to that. And you can see that the reference in the second bullet is to the CAP. Fred? You can say no. So just to look at the first bullet, a month-long public challenge, Time to Earth Month. Well, Earth Month is here, as we know.
Yeah.
Or Bike Month, September. Inviting residents to substitute at least one car trip per day with walking, biking, or the coast bus. Participants sign up and log trips through a simple form, and the committee tracks aggregate miles and estimated CO2. So I think this is very discrete and specific and consistent and near term, but could be clearly related to longer term. Also, I think probably right to relevant for Bright Action or whatever future platform we might move toward. Any thoughts on this one?
Well, it's not really wouldn't be a CIP item, would it?
No, it would be
No.
something that the committee, maybe working with city staff, could own.
It's
Really.
more of a PR effort.
And that, it's like a community, the outreach,
Yeah, yeah.
getting people thinking and exposed to the cap, getting people thinking and, I mean, this could be tied into a lot of things that are sustainability related.
A final, go ahead.
No, you-
A final version might be scoped differently, like just to schools for the first time we do it, or just to we could go by neighborhood. I personally really struggle with any like challenge gamification type concept. It's not where I lean. But if done right, I've seen them be very successful in other towns.
This is one where I think we would need a high level of committee interest
Yeah.
and member interest because it's very much hands-on. I mean, it's not a matter of making a recommendation through the CIP cycle of 3 different subcommittees and screening committees and advocating,
Yeah.
refining it. This is something we really wouldn't need anybody's permission so much as to try to find interested partners.
There's a couple of city tools we could use. Like I noticed the city e-newsletter that Monty Bohannon works on. It looks really good. I don't know what he did with the fonts or the colors or whatever, but this is the kind of thing that we could use the newsletter for. And then there's also those, what are they called? Quick polls?
Yeah.
Fast vote.
Flash polls.
Flash polls, that's it. You know, we could have something leading
vote.
up. Flash vote,
Yeah.
okay.
Got that right.
Leading up to the car-free challenge, we could have a couple of,
And this could actually be related to a community conversation as well.
yeah.
In fact, it might be a community conversation related to implementing the cap.
Sure, the library would jump on this too, helping to
Yeah.
kind of talk about it.
Another thing, you know, you could either substitute a car trip with walking, biking, or not at all.
Yeah,
Like instead of driving the car to buy the newspaper or something like that, you know, just
Stay home.
the most energy efficient transportation trip is to stay home.
make your own coffee.
Remote work.
So that'll be our motto, just stay home.
Sully, what do you think
Stay home.
of interest in high school on something like this as a
Like a
partner?
car-free challenge?
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, there could definitely be interest in people participating in it. Or encouraging carpooling, that could also be something that,
That's a good idea.
people might go for people who don't have the opportunity to walk or bike to or from the school, but definitely something to think of for like Earth Month or Earth Day, April.
and the key is the reducing vehicle miles traveled, which is mode shift, really. Single occupantly, SOV, single occupant vehicle, fossil fuel
I
vehicles.
wonder if we got funding, if we could have Coast be free for that month.
Mm.
That would be-
Post does free promotions often.
Yeah.
They'll do it on election day. They'll do it sometimes when they're really trying to market and get outreach. So they would be a good possible partner, especially if there was a grant of some sort available. seed
Yeah.
I
money.
mean, there's like levels to this of like, there's just the send out the newsletter, put posters up, and then there's the build in collaborations, organize bike rides to school. Like there's a lot of different
Yeah.
scopes that we could do for this. For me, kind of like you said, I would want to see very clear ownership of someone in the committee and like a clear plan for those partnerships so that if we went down this path, there would be follow through.
Yeah, I mean, Sabre does a lot of incentives. They have a program where if you join Sabre, you get a sticker to put on your bike helmet and you get discounts at White Heron and, you know, half a dozen other places. Okay, so let's look at the next one from, yeah, Bert.
I was just gonna say, there's something that we have control of in the city, like we could get the plan. And I was thinking, like, connect the dots. We have the sustainability fair coming up that we are collaborating with the city. And so I think where are we trying to influence the city and what can we do
Yeah,
in the residents as opposed to the city? And one of the things we did at one of the sustainability fairs, we said to everybody, can you come here in a more
Yeah,
less energy intense mode of transportation. And we had all kinds of vehicles. So I'm thinking there's ways we could bring it in
Yeah.
to specific programs without making it a big program.
yeah. And I think all these things could be elements of it. You know, if there's someone who would like to lead this and a couple of other people who would like to participate in it. I mean, we've had 3 or 4 really good ideas for how to work with the city and not just not this year's sustainability fair, but maybe next next year. Okay, next item. Advocate for a coastal resilience incentive zone. This is very much in harmony with other things that are underway. I don't know, Kate, if you had a chance to look at this and had any thoughts on it?
I love this one.
Mm.
This is definitely more of a, probably some, well, advocating, obviously that's what makes it kind of a community one. But it also is a municipal strategy out of the cap, because we'll be having, we do have some older, like 2013, 2015 coastal zone data that we had done for us, for the city, but there should be an update coming this fall by the State Coastal Program and Woods Hole that are doing a coastal assessment for flooding. And so I think that's kind of the perfect opportunity for us to start to look into this, is having like an overlay zone. Like we already do have, you know, the historic district, we have the FEMA flood zones, but having this coastal hazard zone also includes people that probably are gonna see impacts from groundwater flooding as well as surface water flooding or tidal flooding. So it's kind of, in my mind, this would be something that we should tackle very soon, in the next 5 years. And it's something that I think is really important, but we can do it in stages.
Yeah.
especially
So
with the report
it
here.
might be more checking the lay of the land and seeing what's possible. It may not be one that the committee leads and owns like the first one, which is much more.
Yeah, I think
specific.
it'd be great to have committee support for this, but I think Peter and I have already kind of talked about doing this once the data is updated.
Yeah.
So it's kind of already in our minds. But I mean, as long as we get support from everybody, I think we
Yeah.
can. hit
So
the
maybe
ground
the
tomorrow.
interested committee members could work with you and Peter.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay. and
Excuse me, Kate, do you know if the tax relief is dollar per dollar? So if you do drainage improvements for 20,000, do you get that much off your taxes over
Wow.
years?
I have no clue. I hadn't looked that deeply into the tax side of this.
Okay, well, we'll learn about
It
it.
seems like too good of a deal to be.
What's that?
It seems like too good of a deal to be dollar for
Yeah.
dollar.
Right, with solar, there's property tax relief up to
Yeah.
25,000.
Let's to keep ourselves agile, let's save some of these
Sure.
more in-depth looks for the next go around, because I want to make sure that we get through to start listing. And a composting pilot number 3. Anybody want to mention that, or we could leave that for Councillor Hopkins at the next meeting? A 2-part initiative. First, a pilot to add food scrap composting to one of 2 city buildings. I wonder how related this is to, I mean, the first one is more the plan part of it, and this is maybe a more specific initiative or implementation. So these could be separate but related things. So there's a pilot, a few options at different cost levels.
So this implies that there is no composting by city departments at the moment?
There actually is at the high school.
Yeah,
It's a very
Yeah, we
recent-
do it at the high
Yeah.
school.
I think it
Yeah.
references the high school here, yeah. Partner with Portsmouth Schools. High School Echo Club is already a committee partner. School Link, so this may be just building on what's already in place. And here's one where there's a reference to USDA and ILSR composting for community grants, $10,000 award. So this may be something where the committee could do some digging on that just to find out what's involved with applying for a grant. And maybe this is something that Sully and Echo Club folks.
Yeah, I'll be
jump in on-
working in this says for the garden, I'll be working in the garden this coming like Friday to June. I'll be in the greenhouse and garden at the school, so
I think on these items, it doesn't have to be limited just to committee members. If there are other folks like Tyler would like to jump in on reducing vehicle miles, for example, working with me and other people, I think that's great. Any friends of the committee or Sully, if this was something that you got involved with and there were other Echo Club folks that would like to join you, that would be great as well as other members. Okay, that's 3 out of 3, and really a tip of the hat to Councillor Hopkins for putting these really complete possibilities together along with Effie, Rianne, and Jess for the first one. So now we'll go back to the thinking about it slides. I think we don't need to linger too much on this, but can we end with a list of priority topics? And I think we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 as possibilities. Let's see if we can list some other ones.
Can
Yeah,
I start?
yeah.
Tracking our current CIP requests, I think,
we should list them
yeah, individually or just CIP requests?
individually.
Individually, okay, yes.
So I think tracking the current CIP requests should be sort of a cross-cutting general thing. So we want to probably track all of them that would benefit from tracking. But I think it's tracking,
They are
monitoring,
List each one
Yeah.
because they're all separate issues.
and I wouldn't limit it to tracking. It's like
Yeah, right.
tracking, monitoring,
Getting it into the budget.
advocating, following up.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, maybe Kate, make that just a sort of you don't even need to give a number to that, just maybe make that a top point, but yeah, I think.
Again, I would list them separately because I looked at our CIP requests and like the first one I looked at is the public transportation multimodal work group that the funding starts in July.
Yeah.
So I assume the work group starts in July, working with parking, traffic and safety and all that. So that's pretty specific
Yeah.
and there's money for that in
Right.
with the parking garage.
So I think
So
for the
that one's-
committee, it's getting involved in that.
Right. So that,
Key.
yeah, but then the second one, electrification of the city fleet. Well, what's the status with the RFP for that?
Yeah.
You know, the funds are available July 1st, so there could be an RFP being written, but I have no idea.
So
if that's the planning
Kate, for the first one, put CIP project to expand public transit, multimodal. And then what was it?
And the committee would be we're more in a supportive role, you were saying, because the.
We don't know.
We don't know yet.
We don't know.
Okay.
There is a committee, and since we are the ones that push so hard for that, I would.
And the second one is electrification of the city fleet and whether the RFP has gotten going. We want to make sure that's happening because there's $50,000
Yeah.
there.
So does this not fall under this thing that we just talked about, which is tracking?
I think just leave that as notes, really.
Yeah.
But I think that listing these things, starting with the CIP.
And then the third one was added to the Jones Ave solar array, and it's to do the feasibility and capacity of all city properties, whether it's rooftops, parking lots, community campus, transfer station.
I
And
will,
my understanding of the CIP process is that it isn't really funded until the budget process is completed. So these are things that the city council as a policy has recommended funding at specific years, specific dates for these things from different sources like general revenue
Yeah.
or dedicated funding
Right.
sources, but it still has to get finalized. So, but I think all these things lend themselves to tracking and finding out the
And the fourth
status.
one, the last one is the greenhouse gas inventory that a UNH fellow is supposed to be coming. I don't know if that's the current plan.
She has been hired.
What's it?
She's been hired, the
Oh,
greenhouse gas.
great.
what's her name?
Right.
Ella Bloomfield Brown.
I know another who does.
Because it'd be great if we could meet with
Yeah.
her
Yeah,
early in the process.
So Kate, will you be working with her?
I will indeed. I will
Good.
be her mentor.
Good.
I first have to learn how to do this myself.
See if you can get her to come to an evening meeting and
Oh, she'll be coming.
meet your friends.
Oh, I'll bring her.
Okay, so we now have 7, and I think maybe, I don't know how you want to.
7?
We've got the 4 plus we've got 8. We've got yours, we've got Counselor Hopkins 3.
Oh, okay.
That's 4 plus these 4. And that looks like a really good start, but I think we can continue adding other ones. And I don't know, Kate, if you want to create another
This is
slide
a
for 6, 7, 8.
brainstorming list?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
We're listing
Nothing
these,
to
but
be voted.
I think then we can decide at the next meeting, maybe about doing some scoring. I mean, really, at bottom one is what would you like to work on? Because if no one wants to work on these, then those don't rise to the top for priorities. Yeah, that's fine to add those, but let's see if we want to add any ones that are additions to these 8.
Something I would. Say something?
Bert, go ahead.
If we're still just brainstorming, I would like to see as a priority, us clarifying our structure for communicating with the public. I don't quite how to say that, but every time I'm seeing this, I'm seeing the possibility for the city can do things, but if a community conversation, for example, was the structure, we automatically knew if we want to get out something on the city is doing to reduce card thing, we could use the community, start to establish not only the newsletter, but I don't know how effective, some really effective, keep trying, right? I said, am I clear what I'm saying?
Yeah, we need some sort of stakeholder engagement strategy.
Yeah, and we already have some in place.
Yes, we have a lot of mechanisms.
And so let's get the mechanisms clear and we use them each time.
And some of these may be more process sorts of things that support all the activities, this stakeholder engagement. And I think the great work that Colleen has done on collaboration and potential partners and committees is sort of in some ways parallel to the public engagement. Those are things that are definitely worth doing and will support. Let's say if we end up with 5 or 6 or 7 priorities that we want to put our time into. But anything else just to get on? And this is not the end of the story on this.
City event waste and zero carbon approach. I have a project plan. I know what the next steps are. I just am not confident that I will have capacity to implement them. I feel like I've talked about this like 3 months ago, if it rings bells for anyone. So I'll put it on the list, and if people are interested in talking about taking the next steps on reducing emissions for events held within the Portsmouth boundaries and reducing waste within the Portsmouth boundaries. Maybe there's some overlap with the zero waste plan, like it gets incorporated into what you guys are doing. I've been doing research, but all of the research is really pointing towards more organized support than the committee right now can give.
I think that some of these, like the one you just put up, and the 2 of the 3 from Councillor Hopkins are related. So it may be that if these are broader topic areas that 2 or 3 people are interested in, they can do the refining and do the planning and present it to the committee for discussion moving forward. So I don't want to get too long a list, but I think one of the next things we can do is try to prioritize based on who would like to do what, and maybe a little bit of simple scoring, like impact and interest.
Difficulty.
Yeah, impact, difficulty. Is this something that the committee can have an impact on?
Another one that I've been thinking about is, so we did some work last year regarding electric school buses. So we got some good basic knowledge. So we could potentially try to move that a little bit further along.
Yeah.
Maybe not actually wind up with a bus at the end of the year, but kind of figure out maybe a game plan. Potentially that's it might be one of those. It might be something that doesn't have a high feasibility, but I think I'd like to see it on the list just to just for us to think about.
And really on all of these, and I think Epi, Rianne, and Jess's slide that we looked at has a bit of this. One of the most valuable things this committee can do is some best practice research on topics and examples, because that really resonates with the council members. Is this something that's been tried? Like the dollar per bag waste disposal, the examples are worth 1,000 conceptual words. Let's looking at the clock, let's stop at this point without saying that this is the definitive list, but is a starting list and can be rationalized. So what would it really involve working on these things? First, who does what? Who wants to work on this? One of the obvious things for things that are underway, like the CIP items or maybe some of the CAP items, is tracking and monitoring what's already in place. Who would we collaborate with? And I think what, Colleen, your table that's not only the committees, but the potential stakeholders, like the multimodal, expand public transit. Well, obviously, Coast, also Wildcat, C&J, Rockingham Planning Commission, potentially as part of this task force going, Chamber of Commerce, hotels, developers as the thing gets going. But that will end up being part of probably what this task force that's in the CIP does, but all that would be part of it. And then depending on whether there's a specific project on doing something like the car-free challenge, that's not so much advocating, it's probably proposing and doing. But on other things like CIP projects, there's definitely advocating and proposing and repeatedly going to the meetings to advocate for it and talking to council members and city staff and other interested committees. And then finally reporting what came out of that. And maybe that's something we want to look toward the end of the year. Last year, Effie and Jess did a presentation to the council on what the committee accomplished over the last year. I don't know if we want to do that again, but certainly could have an end of the year report of some sort about what have we accomplished, and it could be a real range of different things.
So if I'm interested in any of the priorities, should I reach out to you guys? Should I reach out to Kate? Should I just show up at the next meeting with a proposal?
We do that right now. Should we go back to the
Yeah.
PVPA
Me assign.
and put names on all these?
Let's do that really quickly and then pick up on that next meeting that we're afraid will be facilitating this discussion because I'm going to not be here. Okay, this one, it's not surprisingly is me, and hopefully other people would like to join me. I'm hoping maybe at least Tyler would.
Time frame, I think it's like July when this
Yeah,
group is.
but like the next thing, I'm really overdue to touch base with a couple of the city council members that
Well,
proposed.
Councillor Hopkins is chairing parking, traffic and safety.
Yeah,
And we mentioned that
right,
she'd be a key person.
right. But also the council members that got this unanimously supported were councilors Cook and Tabor.
Well, I think we're just saying that at the next meeting, you're going to speak to this one. Well, actually, you're not. So,
I can send some.
yeah, send us a little video of your speech.
Yeah. And I think that related to this one is the committee getting involved with the Blue Ribbon bike and walking committee. And that doesn't necessarily mean being a member of that, which would be great if one or two of us could be, but even if not, to stay involved and to track that. Fred and I were involved in advocating for that. And it happened very quickly and came together very quickly with Councillor Hopkins' proposals that she got really strong support for.
So in the interest of time, let's just go through this list and
Yeah.
put names on it. Just one name.
I think Peter and I can grab this one because it's in our wheelhouse.
Yep, Kate, wouldn't that include the electric school buses?
So we don't own the school bus fleet, so
Just separate.
that's public works, city hall vehicles, our dump trucks.
Yeah, this is one that I really want to make sure happens, but I'm not sure what I can do on that.
This is a current CIP item that's.
Again, the question is, at the next meeting, do you want to speak to why we should do this?
Oh, okay.
This is a early expression of interest
Okay.
in
Yeah,
support of this
absolutely.
being a priority.
That's probably me too.
Money's already in the process of being spent, right?
Right.
So it's zero waste plan, so we put, custom, okay?
Yes, please. And I don't know if Jess is still on the phone, but I think she has an interest in this as well.
Yep.
She is.
Kristen's got her hand up in case anybody hasn't seen.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
Hey, Kristen.
Add me to that one too, please.
The waste.
Kristen, did you want to propose anything for the heat resilience? I mean, the one that the survey is going now for the.
Oh, yeah, that's me and Kristen.
Yeah.
We can put that in here. It's actually one of the CAP strategies, so,
Yeah.
and it's being worked on right now. Good idea.
Are you talking about the heat study, Kate?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I think we don't have much that's directly related to health, and that's a council priority, and I think it's a very good arena for the committee.
Is it okay if I put your name next to that, Kristen?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Thanks. Car free challenge.
I would work on that, but I think probably someone, others should, because it's going to be very hands-on. It would be good to have other committee members too.
So I'm gonna say Peter and Kate and just volunteer him.
When you put that down, are you thinking you're functioning as staff or committee members or both?
For that particular one, staff, because it has to go through planning department to be written up
Yeah,
and, you know.
but it would be good to have other citizen members on it.
Yeah.
Any of those that so it's not all on you, so.
But this is just to present next month.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
yeah.
Yep.
I think someone already said this, but at least number 8 and 5 and 10 can probably be bucketed into one general waste reduction effort. So I'm also interested in this composting pilot and reducing community event footprints, but
Yeah, I think
at the time we can probably
grouping
shrink
those, I
this
think, is
list.
helpful, so
Yeah.
the list isn't as long, and then you can decide how to break it
Yeah.
down.
I'm interested in that
Great.
compost.
Oh. We'll add you in here somewhere.
And maybe we can get more of the schools to compost.
Put me on.
I just want to chime in. I have to double check, but I think Little Harbor does compost with Mr. Fox. I don't know if any of the other elementary schools do. And we do have a compost for just garden waste and school grounds. We haven't put any food or anything in it, but we have been trying to build a compost for when we're cleaning out the gardens.
Okay, so that's a big group.
Yeah. Number 8 is Bert.
That part.
That's fine.
I'll take this one.
And Fred, the only thing I would say about that is, are there funds available? Are there, I mean.
Well, yeah, it's a question, but I
that's
mean.
the- That's the question that has to be
That
answered.
would be the thing to work on. If we
Right.
decide this is a priority,
And how do you do that? How do you research?
well, you go back to those
Available.
kind of, look at best practices. Other communities have done it, where they get the money.
Well, yeah, but now the funds have dried up. I mean, right
Well,
now there's no
theoretically,
funds.
but there may be other things.
Yeah, we have to be ready for when the money comes.
Yeah.
I had something that I didn't get to add that I think is really important for this committee. What's going on with New Hampshire Community Power?
Mm.
There's a meeting coming up April 20th, and Councillor Bagley in particular has been pretty vociferous about this and how the rates have increased, and we have to look at make it easy as possible for people to get out, which it is pretty transparent, I think, but for me, I think we have to look at how to look at it in terms of the long run, not the short-term month-to-month increases. And I think that should be a priority of this committee being involved with Energy Advisory Committee.
Yeah, this is the top topic for the Energy Advisory, past 3 months, so,
Yeah.
sure it'll be, next Monday as well.
It may be a matter of us staying informed on that.
Right.
You know, probably those perspectives, long run versus purely shorter term
Maybe some
financial
advocacy.
is coming out of the debates probably on the committee and will be raised, but I think it would really be good for us to know what's going on.
Yeah, and clearly the Energy Committee's in the lead on this,
Right.
and their heart is where ours is in terms of, you know, using more renewable power and all that. So, I think it's sufficient if we just monitor it and you know,
Maybe,
offer our support.
yeah, when it's needed for us to be there to advocate.
Right.
The committee.
Which
could-
would be putting a CAP sustainability emphasis that
Right.
maybe is something that we can add because we're so involved in the CAP, which probably doesn't come up so much on the Energy Committee. I mean, that could be
Yeah.
some value added, say if there's advocacy for a longer term perspective, we could contribute to that.
And vice versa, for example, for affordable housing,
Yeah.
the Energy Advisory Committee potentially could advise on ways to build housing that is more energy efficient. Not only,
Weatherized current.
not only weather, not only more better insulation, but also sources of power. For example, not running gas to new housing. This is a trend in the housing industry where you have whole neighborhoods that don't need gas just because it's cheaper, it's faster, there's less permitting, it's more environmentally friendly.
Yeah.
So that's something we could potentially adopt.
Right, right.
Okay, so was 11 the total that we've got? Yeah, I think that's a good total. Some of those can probably be combined. Let's see. Was there one more slide after this or was that the last
Yes.
slide? Okay, this is yeah, this is what would happen. And I think while we're fine tuning the list, because at some point I think we'll want to prioritize really based on what people want to put their time into. Since we only get into this every month, I think we've always been doing some of these things anyway, like the tracking and the monitoring of the things that are underway. And I think if there's anything that's already come up on the list that you've been involved with already or that you would like to get involved with, just jump right in and start tracking and monitoring it. And probably those items will end up being part of the work that this committee does going forward as priorities. And otherwise isn't time wasted, like the CIP project for expanding public transit or the bike pedestrian plan is something that I'll continue to be involved with and hopefully others are as well. And same thing with some of these other ones. I mean, we don't have to wait for the month. And then just final thought on this, I think once we get that list sharpened and the who's doing what clearer, I think that's going to be a good part of how we organize our time the rest of the year on those topics with additional topics as they come up, guest speakers or new things that come on the horizon. But that's really, I think the intent here is that this is really how the committee organizes itself going forward, not only monthly, but between months. And it's not that different than what we've always done, but this is a way of being a little bit more strategic upfront.
So next month, do we want to come in with like a proposal for each priority to like present those particular specifics?
I think if there's a topic that you've already identified yourself as interested in, come in and be ready to discuss it. I think Fred and I will meet and maybe try to polish up that list a little bit and get it out to people
Yeah,
pretty soon, along with think about these three things. And it may be these things. What are the opportunities? Is this something that you could be working on, tracking, monitoring, opportunities for collaboration, opportunities for advocating or proposing? And that really is more on the CIP later, but it may be some shorter term sorts of things.
Would it be possible to have like, I mean, maybe it's just these questions, but some sort of like template where like if I wanted to do the stakeholder engagement strategy, for example, it would prompt like, okay, identify exactly like who would your partners be? Is this more of supporting the planning department or something that we're running? What is your like all the things that we would put on the scorecard?
Yeah,
Have people come in with those
Hmm.
identified for the priority they want to be involved in. So that we can be as specific as possible.
yeah, so that would be something to work on between the meetings.
Yeah, when we meet next week at Di Stefano, we can talk about that.
Yeah, we have a.
Standing calzone
We have
appointment.
The reason we've been doing these wonderful agendas is over Di Stefano's coffee and
That's lovely.
calzone.
A little caffeine driven.
But maybe Colleen, we can check with you about that. And it maybe it's just, you know, playing out a little bit more that number, the number 3. But I think there's also some of the other things that I think particularly Bert has mentioned on the community engagement and the education. I mean, those are all potentially, depending on the topic, important aspects of them. You know, I would think those are potentially, if we end up with 7 topics, there should be a community engagement and a partnership collaboration aspect for each.
And
Okay,
I think it would be good to touch base with Counselor Hopkins next month. Last year, we met with the city council in August and told them what we were gonna be requesting for the capital improvement plan.
Mhm.
And that worked well. And it's not all about these priority topics, obviously are not all about the CIP. But we could still use that cadence to meet with them
This is a-
and say, this is what the
This is
committee
what we're
working
working on.
on.
Yeah.
You know,
And then that set up the report to the council end of the year that was more like November, when was that? It was before the election, probably,
yeah, probably. I can't remember.
October. That would motivate us to try to have something to say. Okay,
So can we close this?
yes, we'll close this and back to the facilitator.
Taking control. All right. We have a sustainability fair coming up April 10th. I believe the planning department is tabling
Mhm.
and that the committee can show up in support of that table. Or do we have our
The
own
committee
table?
has their own.
Beyond that, and Jessica mentioned this, we talked about having the Seacoast Climate Action Now and Portsmouth Climate Action table next to the city's table, so we can reference each other, and some of us that are involved in both can sort of be involved in both. And that, I think Jess has very kindly arranged to make that happen, right? And Jess, do you want to add anything?
Yep, that is all accurate. Sustainability committee, no, sorry. The planning department will be tabling next to Seacoast Climate Action Now, and whichever projects are able to attend as part of Seacoast Climate Action Now, including Portsmouth Climate Action. And Conservation Commission, I believe, will also sort of be set up maybe on the other side of the planning department's table, along those same lines. Just to plug the fair more broadly, we have over 20, maybe even 25 exhibitors coming. We have a coast bus coming that people can check out. We have EV vehicles coming. Seacoast Science Center is bringing critters. We have the Wildlife Center up in York at the near Mount A bringing reptiles as well. We have a good mix of regional participants. So Kittery Land Trust will be there. The Kittery Climate Action Now will be there. We're hoping York Climate Ready will be there. A lot of our usual attendants will be there, Blue Ocean Society and CELT and those kinds of places. So we should hopefully have live music inside and out and refreshments and hopefully food. So spread the word.
All right, it is 4:30 to 7 p.m. on April 10th. Put it in your calendars. It's gonna be a blast. Is it at the middle school again?
It's at the Connie Bean. Yep.
Connie Bean Center, which is
Next to the middle school.
not the middle school, I have to keep
Right
reminding
next to
myself. Yes, it'll be a very good time. All right, moving on, we have some updates on the CAP dashboard. Kate, I assume that's you?
Nope.
No,
Yeah, so, what does it say?
CAP dashboard?
Yeah, the CAP action tracking dashboard, you were looking at some examples from other CAPs and, it's just update on how that's going. and
On the
we can-
tracking sheet,
Tracking.
the one that,
Weren't you gonna do a dash?
I thought on the website,
Dash-
oh my God,
you
yeah,
know,
I
the
did.
way it looks right now, and it's got the,
I was gonna look
Graph.
into graphics of just like really basic percentages, so we don't just have that screenshot of
Oh, yeah, yeah.
baseline scenario.
Mhm.
Yeah, like a thermometer kind of thing.
Yeah, and I gotta say, I haven't had a chance to do that yet, so that's on me.
Right, we'll put it on. next
Um,
agenda.
Yeah, I have been talking to the GIS department that we have, and they have access to a different format of dashboard that they think might work if we just put in like really basic emissions data. So it won't be like the Power BI dashboard that gave us kind of the road to net zero, but it'll be more basic, so it's something we can look into. And I'll
Even something just very graphic and descriptive, so someone can look at it and say, okay, here are the 12 big picture
yeah,
actions and how are we doing on progress? It could be as simple as, red light, yellow, green, or,
a visual.
because it'd be very hard to try to quantify everything. I mean, some things could be quantified, particularly with the intern you're working with, or maybe
Yeah, that's true.
greenhouse gas reduction.
Right.
That's
That'll be on my next month's.
We Look forward to it.
Thanks for the reminder.
Any updates on Bright Action and other platforms?
So I think we already said that, Seacoast cannot fund it.
Yep.
So we want to move on. We're gonna leave.
Yes.
So, I think we'd like to formally change the, reference on the Sustainability Committee page to, Drawdown Explorer
Drawdown Explorer.
rather than Bright Action. And also, Kate, on the, I didn't see it all the time, but I saw on a recent Monday Enforcement newsletter,
Mhm.
there was a feature for Bright Action.
Yeah.
Here's an item from Bright Action, some action you could take. So that, I'm not sure how often that's supposed to happen or how that happened. But if it's gonna be regular, like monthly or something, that, in the future, we could reference something from an item out of Drawdown Explorer.
Is Drawdown Explorer, is that some other platform?
Well, it's just a website.
Phrase?
It's just,
The Project Drawdown is a research nonprofit to help draw down emissions, and Drawdown Explorer is their
Is there?
solutions dashboard.
Oh, okay.
Well,
Library, it's a library.
It's a library, yeah. So it has, just like Bright Action has a list of,
So change the Bright Action library to this one.
so it's drawdown.org/explorer. And maybe once a month, we could pick an item out of there from the list of possible items and feature it on the enforcement newsletter. If that's something that, I don't know if you can, I'm not sure. Do you know how that happened? How the,
Before we withdrew, they had just started doing this January, a monthly newsletter that they make the newsletter piece and just send it to every community to put in their own newsletters. So it was already kind of all written up. The Monty just had to plug it in. So we didn't do any of the writing, which was nice. But if there's something on Project Drawdown that you want to highlight, you can always send it to him a week before with a little a graphic.
that may be a place where we can highlight other things the committee's working on.
like the car-free day?
Yeah, right.
Cool. Then the last formal item is Energy Resident Parking Pilot Blue Ribbon Bike Ped Committee.
So it's just a laundry list of all different committees. So I'll just give an update on the Energy Committee. The big topic is the rates, New Hampshire community power rates. There's, so they've been working on some kind of public communication to say why the rates are higher and what you should do about it and how they could change if they want, change back to Eversource. And kind of a future projection for what the rates will be, next year. Because some of the rate, the amount of the rates right now is driven by some short-term factors that could change over time. But anyway, so that's the big thing. And the other thing with the Energy Advisory Committee is, I can't remember now. I'll get back to you if this is,
Next time.
what's the next one?
The resident parking pilot.
Yeah, you wanted to take a cut at just very simply summarizing the pieces of that?
Sure, yeah, so the resident parking pilot program will put a cost on out-of-towners parking in designated areas that are just outside of the downtown core metered area. Residents registered in Park Mobile still get to park for free with absolutely no additional action as long as they are in Park Mobile. So the object is to help these neighborhoods that are adjacent to downtown deal with what they perceive as parking issues, and in my mind, potentially make it easier to continue to develop dense downtown housing. First thing people complain about when they try to build something new downtown is where are all these cars going to park that don't have, parking in the basement. Now we potentially know better that some of these people are not going to have cars. Maybe they'll have one car instead of two. There's a lot of other options, but the neighbors see it as, oh my God, our streets are going to be overladen with people from out of town, new residents, and all that stuff. So that's what this program is trying to do.
It's a pilot, and we both attended the traffic and parking review to come up with recommendations, and I think they recommended going forward with the pilot. It's Parrott Street, and it was broader around the city, some city lots around town that are currently free, but they cut most of those out, and it ends up being somewhat limited. I did my usual critique of transportation planning principles that really run counter toward free parking, and really suggesting that the residents continue to get a discount, but that if it's free parking, then often free parking is overused and is not a good way of matching supply and demand. But I think that didn't make much difference, but that was a sustainability perspective that I tried to add to that. I think the intent was to go ahead as a pilot and to put it in place, but it doesn't look like it's in place yet. And I think on the agenda for next meeting, both that and the Blue Ribbon Bicycle and Pedestrian Committee can be included on the meeting next time, because Councillor Hopkins is the new chair of that committee. So probably she can help with an update, and maybe by next month, the pilot will be in place. For the Blue Ribbon Bicycle and Pedestrian Committee, it's something that a lot of us have been advocating for a few years. And Councillor Hopkins put that together as a proposal very quickly, working with Sabre and other folks who are interested in that as a separate standalone Blue Ribbon Committee that would probably meet maybe every 3 months or so. And so that's now forming and taking applications for membership of that committee. But it's really a great thing, because the focus will be on implementing the new bike and pedestrian plan through the CIP. And in the CIP, there are specific entries in that, and I think this new committee will help advocate that, and maybe this committee can continue to stay involved.
Absolutely. Getting back to me, so the other thing for the Energy Advisory Committee is that next month, I believe next month, we're supposed to get the report on the feasibility of the Jones Avenue landfill solar array. So we'll be checking in on that, and then hopefully I'll have an update for this group next month.
Awesome. Cool. Thank you for those updates. We are at 8:18, so I'm going to open it for any other business, and then also reserve a little bit of time for us to just recite what our actions are at the end of the meeting. So Jess?
I thought Kristen had something
Oh.
to say earlier. Kristen, did you delay talking about
Sure. Yeah, I can give you an update on Skip the Stuff on what we've been doing with that. So the health department has on every routine inspection, inspectors are educating or having discussions with our permit holders about the policy that the city council passed. We created a table tent that has a QR code that brings people back to the website that we had already established for Skip the Stuff and the policy. And when a restaurant opts in, they get the table tent that I'm sorry, I wasn't aware I was going to be talking about this. I would have actually had something to show you what it looks like. But they have them that they can put out their registers or on tables to educate further about what it is and why they're participating. We also have a separate web page on the website where we're tracking the restaurants that are participating. So we add them as we find them on inspection. We've had a really good kind of kickoff start. I think we only have 17 currently listed. We have 17 participants in Skip the Stuff. Monty also includes them in the newsletter every so often. So we wait till we get a group of new ones that sign on, and then he puts it out to the community that way. One of the things that I'd like to bring up with the committee is, as we've been tasked, we're regulators that are trying to educate people we permit about something that's a policy. They listen because they're kind of trapped in the inspection. And so they listen, they hear us out for that. Sometimes because if their inspections maybe don't go great and they're getting a lot of information from us about what has to happen from the regulatory perspective for their establishment, and then we throw the Skip Stuff on top of them, it's like Charlie Brown's teacher might be participating at that point. So we actually think it might be useful if there is more community engagement in the education piece for why the community would like to see this happening. And we were thinking that possibly the school group would be a good group to help get the message across, because things land differently if you have students saying, hey, it's important for us to reduce waste this way, and we'd like to see you do it, then coming from those of us who are already telling you have to do 100 things because you're not doing it correctly by regulation. Do you know what I mean? So I'd like to throw that back out to the group, because we do think that's an important piece that's maybe not being met yet. And I think that speaks to Bert's number 9 of engaging with the public, where you want it to not just come from us as regulators, but also committed community members who have a stake in this as well. And so they're hearing from the public who go to their facilities, and not just us who are in there already telling them what to do. But it's going over pretty well. We're getting some feedback from restaurants. They're like, yeah, we don't have time for this. We're not gonna take this on right now. So each time we go in, we try to talk to them a little bit more about ways they could slowly implement it. There's some language concerns with it as well. We're kind of tracking what we're getting for responses so we can figure out maybe better ways to address our education piece with them.
It seems like it's an incremental thing, and the more restaurants see that the restaurant next to them or the two on the block are doing it, then maybe they talk to each other and realize that maybe this is a positive thing.
Yeah, we try to point out all of the gains cost-wise to them. That does help, but I honestly think that hearing from their customers that it's important to them, that would go a long way in having more of them consider adopting this process.
How do you advise that conversation is facilitated? So like if I'm a customer of these restaurants, do I literally walk in and like speak to the manager?
Yeah, you can ask them, and that would be the person I would talk to, because the people in this working the registers may or may not even be aware of it. But yeah, explain to them why it's important to you. What value do you see, and why would that make you continue patronizing their establishment over someone who may not be participating in it? Coming from a regulator, it's just another thing that they have to do to check off a box. You know what I mean? But coming from a concerned citizen, it lands differently.
Yeah, makes sense.
Jess?
To that point, I know the plastics working group for the state of New Hampshire, that's a volunteer group. They had cards, which mixed feelings about, right? It's potential waste, but you could leave them with your bill that either said, we wish you would consider being more conscious of your single use distribution, or I can't remember the verbiage, I can find it. Or if they were already actively doing it, said, thank you so much for participating in this. So maybe that's something that as committee or subcommittee, we should think about trying to create and distribute to help. And then it's maybe easier for some people than trying to speak to the manager and, you know, have more of that direct conversation. You can still let your priorities known.
Yeah.
Sorry, not to switch topics, and Kristen, I would love to chat with you more, but Bill, can you tell me real quick, when they were talking about the pilot parking program, did they talk to the library at all about when they were considering using Parrot Ave? I know when we were planning sustainability fair, we had real concerns if that pilot was in effect about that meant exhibitors might have to pay to park while they were participating in the event. And my impression from library staff was that they had concerns about how it might impact their programming if people were trying to come from neighboring communities. Was any of that considered when they were mapping out?
I think that the library or some of that, like around Connie Bean in the middle school, was part of being considered as part of the pilot. And I think it got fairly complicated because they wanted to protect the free parking for the staff and the faculty. And I think there were some concerns about library patrons not being able to park in the library parking spots. But maybe, Tyler, if you remember anything more specific, I think they just dropped that parking.
The libraries dropped.
They dropped that. I mean, they were trying to get some good policies in place over that, but I think that ended up being very complicated. And I know for something like the sustainability fair or for the election, for the voting at Connie Bean, that's a problem, but I don't know if that was really discussed as part of that. I don't know, how have you dealt with that in the past? Yes, it's just a problem for exhibitors. Do you try to reserve some spots for exhibitors to drop off?
We try to ask exhibitors to drop off items and then go park over actually at the South Mill parking area, so that we can leave the closer spots for community members who might attend. But really trying to make this a regional event, we started to have concerns if we were inviting somebody to a fair and then asking, and they were coming from Kittery or Greenland or Dover, and then asking them to pay to park to attend the event. So I know it's not going to impact the fair, but I just didn't know moving forward what that decision had been around that area. Because again, the library staff seemed to express, at least in our conversation, some concerns for them about other programming and similar factors. So
I think along with the library, the South Mill on lot was, I think, included in the original pilot. So that would be free parking for residents and paid parking for non-residents. But I think they dropped that. And a lot of the ending discussion was what to do for downtown workers, because they were going to give the downtown workers, I think, can sign up to park for $3 a day. In the Foundry garage, they wanted to give $3 parking for downtown workers who aren't residents on Parrot Avenue, and that ends up being not very much space. And
I'm going to call on Effie,
Yes.
and then I'm going to have us do actions because we're almost at close.
Just a really quick announcement. The Coastal Adaptation Work Group is running a Coastal Climate Summit on May 21st at UNH. It's a Thursday, and it looks like it's going to be really good. I won't be able to go, but it ties in pretty closely to the Coastal Resilience Zone work that Councillor Hopkins mentioned, and it's really important to the work we're doing on resilience. So it's the Coastal Adaptation Work Group. May
Is
21st.
it streamed or live only?
That I don't know.
I don't think so. I think it's in person.
It's like a good outing.
Rhiannon, did you take actions or do you want me to say what they were?
I did take actions, but let's make sure we have the same ones. Proposal to upload read-only documents onto a Google Drive, action for Kate to confirm that with legal. I don't know if we want to call this an action, but we should select someone who will run the check-in question at next meeting.
Yes, who wants to do that? Any interest? Who wants?
I'll do it.
Fred is going to do our check-in. Thank you, Fred. Going to do our check-in.
Trying to manage my anxiety.
So there will need to be a order of operations here, but I have Fred and Bill to identify prompting questions for members to be prepared to answer with respect to the initiatives that they are interested in. And then presumably the
They'll send
committee
out-
members will come prepared with the answers to that
Yes.
questions. Kate, ahead of next meeting, to look into updates on the CAP dashboard on the website and change the reference on the website from Bright Action to Project Drawdown. And then that is actually everything that I have. Did I miss anything?
Change that to Drawdown Explorer.
Drawdown Explorer, you got it.
And the only other piece being that the sustainability fair is the 10th. Our next meeting is the 23rd. So it's the last time we're meeting before the fair happens. Yes, so thank you for those actions. If there were personal things you want to add to your own to-do list based on that, please do so. Our next meeting is going to be April 23rd in this room, 6:30 to 8:30, all the normal stuff. I hope to see you all at the fair. And now we can float a motion to adjourn. Do we need to do that? Does anyone have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Seconded.
All right. Awesome. All in favor?
All right.
Let's go home. All right. Stop recording. Tell me, friends.